Well, hi guys, I'm Greg Howlett, and I'm here one more time with Floyd Cramer.
Floyd Crawford.
Floyd Crawford. Danny Crawford. You'll know why I call him Floyd Cramer here in a second. But we're going to talk about something a little bit technical here, but something that I get asked about a lot, and that's the subject of licks. And I always sort of say, I don't know anything about licks. Well, today we have the guy here that knows licks, and he wrote the book. He wrote the book on licks. You're in the studio someday, don't be surprised if somebody says, play a Crawford 27 lick. And the reason why they say that is because he wrote a book, literally cataloging all these different licks, which are just little flourishes. And I'll let you explain here in just a second what we mean by that. But this is the way to sort of, well, here in the South we use the word fill, F-I-L-L. We fill in dead space in music, or we fill in the places like when a soloist takes a break. We're going to fill in the, maybe they're holding a note or whatever. We do something, a little flourish there. And so we're going to talk about that today and give you some ideas not only on specific licks that you can play, but also some ideas on how to build your own. So take it away.
One way to look at it when you're thinking about fills is there's usually a place to do it anytime. If you're looking at it visually, if you're looking at music, anytime there's a whole note or a half note, that's a good place to put a fill. At the same time, if someone's holding a note, I think we've talked about the song Amazing Grace, when it hits that note of saved a wretch like me, while they're holding me, that's a good place to do it. But the thing you want to look at is what kind of style or not F-I-L-L feel on this, but what kind of feel, F-E-E-L,
okay,
do you want to give the song? And then that depends on maybe the F-I-L-L.
So the feel defines the feel?
Yeah.
The feel defines the feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if your name's Phil, then it can really...
It becomes feels for different feels.
Yeah.
Okay. This isn't comedy hour. So go ahead. I'll stop now.
So a lot of times, especially on a session, they may say, well, we need this song to have a country feel. We need it to feel like Chicago or Texas swing or Cajun. What does that mean? If you listen to certain styles and began to kind of study what is it, not only the instrumentation that makes up a certain style, but what is it that those instruments are playing that makes it that way. And with country music especially, one of the guys that just totally changed the trajectory of how country music would be heard, perceived, and played was the pianist Floyd Cramer. And you know, he made his little Floyd Cramer lick. It became so known through his song "Last Date," which you can go on internet or anywhere and you see guys all over the place learning to play "Last Date." And basically what he does or did, and he took just the basic notes of a major chord. That if you have a C chord, you have your C, E, and G. Take the second note of your scale, which is a 2, and then your 5.
Yeah.
And you just flip the 2 into a 3.
Yeah.
Now where a lot
you sound like Floyd Cramer.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that?
And where some people get hung up on it, even though that's just such a seemingly really basic lick, they hear that something's flipping, so to speak, in that move, but they're not sure what it is, and they'll oftentimes play it where they do their thumb first and then the 2 top notes. They'll go,
yeah.
They'll think maybe when he played "Last Day," he went.
It lacks a certain elegance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the key to making it happen is where you take your 5 on top, and you take that 2, and while holding the 5, and that's the key right there.
Yeah.
It's while holding the 5, just flip that little 2 into a 3. And so then when you hear what he did when he went,
sure.
And from there it was the classic, and so basically people began to take that one little lick, and you can put it in any song if you wanted to have that country edge to it.
Is that really the start of what we call licks-based playing? Or surely they were doing that before then, but or is that did it sort of spawn a whole different way of looking at it?
I think that could be it right there. That it caused people to start looking at it and hearing it differently because, country certainly didn't come along in the '60s, but the predominance, I think, of the piano especially began to come along there, and so he just that little thing created a whole almost genre of piano playing.
Really?
So,
isn't that interesting?
And so if you look, okay, and think, well, how would I apply that to a song? We've used Amazing Grace for an example before on stuff. If you look at the melody to Amazing Grace, let's think of it in G, like it is in most hymn books. All right, it's starting out on your G chord, and your melody is. All right, knowing that the Floyd Cramer lick, when you play, the two notes that you're ending up on out of a G chord is the third and the fifth.
Right.
So if you look and think, okay, the third and the fifth, where is the third and the fifth being used in the melody of Amazing Grace? Now don't think that everywhere that a 3 or 5 happens that's where you're supposed to play the lick, but especially where does it happen? Either where a note holds or where it can be done and be tasty. So look what it does. If you're taking the melody, all right, use your little flip on that. See, you're basically putting the harmony note is on top while you play that third.
Okay.
And right here, when it goes to the C chord.
Yeah. So you emphasize a note. You have to emphasize a lower note. The melody is not a note is not on top in that case. It's down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fall in the trap of thinking, okay, my harmony note always has to be on the bottom or has to be on the top. It can float around on you.
Yeah.
But
okay. So that is I noticed. I've read your book. I've noticed that you actually. It's not like you say it, but there's a section in there that looks like. It's like you took that very simple lick and then you built a series of licks that get more and more elaborate based on the same idea, which is the flip between 2 and 3.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that would be one sort of a category, and those like maybe play a more elaborate lick based on that based on the flip.
Okay. If we're using, let's just say if you were looking at the song "What a Friend We Have in Jesus."
Okay.
All right. If you were doing that in a country style, the place where that would work perfect would be where it hits the word Jesus.
Okay.
See, while that half note was holding out there was a place to do something. Well, it happened on a B flat chord. The song's in F.
Okay.
So I'm taking that little flip, but I'm also playing in and out of the second chord or the second note of that chord and the root.
So that would be, yeah, and I understand most people watching this are going to say, oh, can you do that slower so we can write down? And the point is, you can obviously get very fancy. You can start with the very simple, in which I would bet, if you listen to a lot of your music, a lot of your stuff probably would be more toward the simple side, right? Mm-hmm. Simple is, I mean, we don't want to, if you just turn every song into tons of elaborate flourishes, that goes nowhere. So there's no harm or shame at all in playing the simple fills. But there's a lot of very fancy ones like the one he was just doing that we won't take the time now to explain exactly how. But it's out there. You can actually track down his book and have it. I don't know if that would be in your book or not, but something similar. Yeah. if not. Another category that I've seen that you deal with in terms of hooks is a bluesy feel, which for those of y'all that may have, if you read me, you know I talk about flat 3, the blues note, so-called blues note. So that would be the blues note, and you would use that in fills, I've noticed. So give us a demonstration maybe of a bluesy fill.
Okay, a lot of times your bluesy things happen by taking your third and flatting that, and also using a flat 7. And sometimes the bluesy stuff also can have a little bit of that. It's almost like it's kissing cousins with some of the country stuff. So if you were doing Amazing Grace and kind of wanted a little bit more of that bluesy sound.
From like 2 to flat 3 and from flat 3 to 3, right? For a lot of, so the flipping is still occurring, but it's you've incorporated a flat 3 instead of going from 2 to 3. Sometimes it's from flat 3 to 3. Is that right?
That, and sometimes even going from a 2 to a flat 3.
Right.
And then when you get to up to your 5.
Play the devil's music now. Keep going.
See, I'm imagining someone singing the melody. I'm not playing the melody. Flat chord.
Yep.
Using your 7th. Flatted thirds into major thirds.
Yeah.
Flatted fifths into a 5th.
Yep. So the big point about this, of course, is not all music is written in the key of C. So when you're learning these kind of flourishes, the problem is you do have to learn them in every key. And what we talked about in the last section about numbers comes into play again here too, right? In other words, you learn these licks by number so that you can play them in any key.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole time that as I'm playing that right there, I'm thinking it as much numbers as I am notes. See if you can get to a point where you think music is it's mathematics with sound put to it.
Yeah.
And if you can count to 8, you pretty well got it covered.
I'll keep working on it.
So when I'm thinking of that, say that little bluesy lick, if I'm in G, my mind's processing that as 2, 3 flat, 2.
Yeah.
Drop into a 6.
Yeah.
While I'm doing that, I'm holding a 5 over the top of it. So if I just keep that number pattern in the forefront of my mind, I literally can just you place your hands anywhere on the keyboard and think those numbers. B flat, A flat.
And that is, in the end of the day, that's where the practice comes in. You have to know your notes. You have to know every scale. You have to know the numbers in every scale very well, and not only just the numbers, but the flats and all the cracks too. Flat 3, sharp 5, and so on.
Yeah, a lot of folks they let scales terrify them or intimidate them, and I know because that's the way I was. I even put this in the front of my book talking about. I remember when my teachers would send me home with the the John Thompson or Michael Aaron books, and in the back would always be the scales written out. and it would show both hands running across 2 octaves for every key of the piano. And I literally, I can remember looking at that thinking, I'll never memorize all of this. But what I didn't realize was what I was looking at was just an 8-note pattern. And if you play that pattern starting on any note of the keyboard, you know, there's your scale. And once that epiphany, so to speak,
Yeah.
really dawns on you, and you just see how it's so pattern oriented.
But the other point is too, and I think the other way of looking at scales is not only is it you can start or stop on any place, but also a scale defines a pool of notes that become the material for your hook. In other words, you don't have to play them in order, but if you stay within that scale, well, I know this can get sort of complex, but a lot of times the scales will they'll define the boundaries for what your available material is. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I don't know, maybe that's a bad way of expressing it poorly. But there's a lot of reasons to practice, or to at least know scales, and especially scales by number.
Somebody mentioned something really neat recently. They were talking about even the theological relation between scales and even creation itself. You know, you basically, with a scale, you have 7 notes, and then the 8th one is the starting over, the new beginning. And even look at how our days are laid out. There's 7 days in the week, and then it starts all over again. And so your scales are that way. It's basically, once you can memorize that pattern, you know, that's why I think there's such a connection between God and music.
Sure.
Because it's so brilliant.
Yes. So, again, there's a couple of ways you can go about this. One is to learn specific fields and build a vocabulary. And there's a lot of musicians out there that do that, very successful musicians that would do that, in which case you just get busy and start memorizing, and you build up a vocabulary in other words, you can obviously start combining 2 simple fills into one longer, more fancy fill and so on. And I know musicians, brilliant musicians, if that's what they do. I mean, it's just one fill running to the next fill. The other approach would be, and that's like first base maybe, the next base would be where you are really understanding the math or the numbers behind it, and get to the point where you're not locked into somebody else's fills, even if they're your good Floyd Crawford fills. Able to go on beyond that and come up with stuff for yourself. So I guess we would encourage both, right? I mean, right. Both is a good place to be. Well, hopefully we'll see you in the future, and we'll talk a lot more about this. And for those, I hope you guys can take something out of that. Maybe when you come to those places, like Amazing Grace is a great example. If you're just playing for Amazing Grace and you come to that there's a 5 beat where there's nothing to do, yeah, you gotta have a plan for that, or it doesn't sound so good. So this will give you some thoughts on getting started with that. Thanks again for coming, and we'll see you again in the future. See you guys in the next video.